Hey, Mary. Thanks for getting me started. Happy painting.
Actually, I think I'm going to hang out tonight. The class is recorded, so I'd much rather be here.
You are welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome. We'll wait a few minutes. It's interesting. Last week we had 23 and we went up to 68, and so the first minute we just let it ride for a few moments before we kick into gear. Pat, I see you're here visiting and really happy to see you. Long time no see. And Maureen, right in the center of my screen. Glad you're here. Katie and Rasika, lucky me. Charlie, good to see you. And everyone else. Okay. I'll thank you publicly, Mary, for co-hosting. Without Mary, we would not be here. Stephanie, who's just come off of retreat, welcome back. And our chance, as always, to remember that in the midst of, as Albert Camus put it, in the midst of winter, I realized that there was within me an invincible summer. That even in the midst of these very unpredictable, challenging, often cruel moments, that there is both not only the possibility of peace, but the necessity that we all settle into that peace and ease in ourselves that is the peace and ease of our nature. Not just for ourselves, even though it is a great blessing to know that our own well-being is an inside job, but not only for ourselves, but for the benefit of this world that needs more than ever stable refuges, stable, heartful, and responsive. All those qualities that live in us as us, that are nurtured and expressed, available when we practice. When we practice together, when we practice regularly. All the, as the Buddha put it, all the causes of the heart's release, liberation, all the wholesome forces are strengthened and deepened. And so we don't practice just to feel a little better, we practice to awaken, and we practice to awaken for the benefit of all beings, including ourselves. So as always in the Theravada tradition, the natural settling in process is the the choice together with others to feel secluded, to let the eyes close softly, to withdraw the activity of our usual preoccupations, our usual activities, and to turn inward and just turn first and foremost toward that deepest part of ourself that is aware and silent as before our neurosis there is silence. Even before our body there is silence, and we tap into that. It's silent, aware, and what allows us to hear and speak to one another, to experience life, and as well as the silence is this body with its senses, and we bring our awareness together with our body until both the idea of body and awareness give way to simply being bodyful, mindful, kindful, all one thing. Naturally, we feel the stilling of the sitting body, the movements that our body makes when it breathes, and each felt experience of the body, breath, aliveness, pressure, touch points, whatever it is. Each one of those sensations felt empties us of the imagined past and the imagined future and calls us to the only reality, this unfolding now. And we just use our body and breath to stay here, to anchor our attention, to allow us to use every sense experience to call us here, every sound, every mood, every thought, every sensation, everything, reminding us of our love of the only reality which is now. And in this way, not only do we heal from our usual fixations in our imagination, but we also tap into reality. We also strengthen our heart, mind. We imbue this attention with kindness, interest, with ease. Noticing that the point of life is always arrived at in the present moment. The point of life is not to solve a problem, but to experience our life. Just this moment, just this breath, just this body, just what is arising. What is being known. If you become aware of thinking, that's just thinking mind. That's a moment of mindfulness. If you become aware you've been lost in the thinking mind, that's waking up. That's mindfulness coming back online. In either case, these are moments of mindful attention. Appreciate them. And just keep anchoring your attention in the body. Just as the Buddha recommended, there's one thing, O monks, that leads to calm, to focus, to a pleasant dwelling in this life, to the heart's release. It's mindfulness directed to the body. Just this moment. whatever you're experiencing right now is the right experience because it is being noticed, known. There is no higher mountain to climb than this moment of noticing. Begin the practice again right now, remembering that mindfulness has no agenda in time. Each moment is fresh, a new beginning, so you can always begin again. If your mind is sinking into dullness, refresh yourself a little. If you're straining or resistant, just notice that and soften your mind, soften your body. Really, there's nothing to do but to notice and then see what intuitive responses to the presently arising experience. Just this moment. Just this body. Just this breath or whatever is predominant. As always, deep appreciation for being able to sit with you. Feels particularly important and poignant right now in the midst of our inflection point, you could say, even though we're always having them, one form or another. Some people, this is exciting times, others, dreadful. But nevertheless, we know that there is active, intentional cruelty that is being imparted in our world. And we need to be the counter force of goodness and kindness and compassion. So it just makes me really happy that there are people practicing and engaged in resistance to the amount of ill will there is in the world. Instead of the FU brigade, we are the I love you brigade. No, really, this is what we're made for, these times like this. You know, we say that every, with the pandemic, but what's really needed right now is people who can stay whole in the middle of when our hearts are breaking and the tendency is to just get infuriated, exasperated, to be able to be quiet in heart and in eyes really clear, and so that we're available and responsive and appropriate, so that we're not compounding the stress of our own lives and the lives of the world, but we're actually making a difference. And I think a lot about what, how the Buddha wasn't really, his notion, he didn't take positions, political positions, because one person's position is different than another. But what he emphasized every single day, the whole Sangha was built around, was cultivating merit, of cultivating actions that are good for oneself and good for the world, and just having that be a constant refrain in one's thoughts and words and actions to do good and to act with integrity and to be true to that, to be truthful to ourselves. That line from Shakespeare, beyond all else, something, to thine own self be true. And, of course, that has multiple levels of meaning. Self, in this case, to that in us which is timeless, deathless, eternal, free, to that be true. Commit oneself to that. But it also means be truthful, be in alignment with your hearts, with that which leads to love and compassion. So that's, I'm happy that we're all, and whoever is, and I know this is just a sample of thousands and thousands of people who are practicing and who are doing good. Remember, I wish I had it with me, Howard Zinn's commentary. Let's see if I can find it real quickly. Just a moment. Well, I'm failing tonight. Sometimes I get lucky and the right one comes to me. If anybody happens to have a quote and wants to put it in the chat about human history, it's not just all the horrible things that happened, but people who acted magnificently. It's not just it's really easy to forget that there's so much goodness happening. One example before I check in with you, and there's more to come for tonight, but just an example of beautiful, heartful resistance. Maybe some of you read this today in the New York Times. Bishop Marianne Edgar Budd, who was leading the service at the National Cathedral, where the President Trump and all his cronies were in attendance today. She took a breath toward the end of her sermon and looked directly at President Trump. I ask you, she said, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now, said Bishop Budd, leader of the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. There are lesbian, gay, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. The direct appeal to Trump at the start of the first full day of his presidency was a remarkable moment. She continued, the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Anyway, it wasn't necessarily received very well, unfortunately, but it's so reassuring to those who care, those who are just heartbroken over the cruelty of some of these early decisions, that there are countless people who are actively in resistance right now. And one of the ways that we practice resistance is our practice. Is that we as Prajna Paramita put it, sorry I'm on a little rant right now, so please be patient with me. Prajna Paramita, considered the founder of Tibetan Buddhism, said, so sensitive an ecology of interdependence of everything, that the slightest attention and assistance to others creates moral elevation for ourselves and humanity, while the slightest indifference or neglect toward others creates moral harm for ourselves and our civilization. The faintest spark of ill will toward other beings, and that reminds us, it's really part of our responsibility, is not to fall into that fury. Feel it, but not act on it. The faintest spark of ill will toward other beings can burst forth into a terrible forest fire, consuming vast expanses of sympathetic joy. When we really need joy right now. We need joy. I don't mean Pollyannish joy. I mean seeing where joy is present. Even the faintest negative reaction or malicious wish opens wide channels throughout our entire being for life-destroying poisons of negation, life-obscuring shadows of self-cherishing. We get caught up in our views, in ourselves, and then we stop being really available to each other. So thanks for your practice. Curious to check in if anybody has any comments, questions about your practice tonight, and then I have some other thoughts that I'd love to share. Madison, please feel free. Welcome.
Hi, Howie. Thanks. My approach so far, which is unusual, is whenever I get bored or distracted or almost anything else, I just visit the news at Yahoo. And what I have done since the inauguration is seek out a public radio station that wasn't covering it and spend an hour listening to Howard Zinn speaking about various things in videotapes and listen to a story about people who knew Martin Luther King. And I'm finding it really interesting. I'm only on, if the inauguration was the 20th, whatever it is today, the 22nd. And then I also turned to the Good News Network and just started reading about the contributions of caterpillars. So I realized I don't know how long I can sustain this, but I really tried to stay out of any of it, even the stuff that was of interest to me in fashion, what were people wearing? And I just thought, out of this. We're going to stay out of it. So I'll be really eager to see what you have to say and what people have to say. But one can live, at least for a couple of days. Like I said, I don't know how long I can do it with not tuning in. And that means that I've tuned into having a cold, I've tuned into my business, I've tuned into taking care of lots of stuff going on in my life. I've tuned into the laundry, I've tuned into cleaning up, but I've just laid it to rest. So I'm eager to hear what you have to say and maybe what people are doing, but that was my reaction. So I don't know what's happened, and I figured I will know soon enough, but it would not be good for me to learn about it now and have a response just yet. Okay, for what it's worth.
Thank you. I won't give any of the details other than what I've already said about there have been some incredibly cruel things that have been done already. And I'll just say that taking a news fast or inclining toward the good news, if it's coming out of aversion or avoidance, it will just invite it back in, in a kind of whiplash effect. But if it's coming out of the wisdom that says I need to look after myself well, I need to find that true, easy, easeful, immediate place, then sounds like the perfect and appropriate response. So, you're the only authority on whether your actions are wise, loving, or appropriate, but it sounds fine to me. But on the other hand, I don't want you to be cultivating aversion to the world and the way it is, because then we become more contracted.
Yeah. No, this wasn't about aversion. It was actually dreaming and fantasizing that there was a peace rally on the beach, not an anti-rally and not a celebratory rally of the bad things. And when I found that there wasn't one, I decided to just seek for it here. So I've had some really nice moments. And yes, I will ultimately hear what's going on, but it doesn't come from an anti perspective. It comes from a God, I really need to pray at this point that we can survive what's going on. And the way I'm
Great.
going to start to do that is no news. Yeah,
Good job.
thanks.
Good job. Carrie, and then Misha. Good to see you, Misha, or good to know you're here. It's been a while. Carrie, please feel free.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. Um, I hearken what she just said, what Madison just said, but to take it a little further, when we go to like say Spirit Rock for residential, or we go someplace, we call to deepen our practice, we call it a retreat. And within that retreat, we deepen our relationship with our practice and ourselves. So I found that in my practice, especially the last few days, that I'm very much in tuned with right now. To quote a good song, what the world needs now is just love, more love. And right now, that is never been more real
Yeah.
than now.
You
And
stole my thunder.
retreating from the news, from the hate, from the fear mongering has allowed me to soften my heart and get past the crushing of the delusions that I could affect the world in a positive way through signing petitions, volunteering, voting, da 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 da, which I've been doing very actively since '95 in politics. I'm realizing that it feels like all of that was a delusion. And the real reality of how I can affect the world and have a true change is something I've heard you speak so many times for so many years, is within myself, and then let that project outside myself, and
Yay.
and,
Thank
and
you.
get that loving kindness and gentleness. And that retreating is not avoidance right now. I love it when you do the guided meditation where you say, think of that person who's giving you something bestowed, and you just feel some magnanimous towards them and sending them all that love and kindness and acceptance and healing. Now imagine that person's you, and then going from that to outside of you.
Okay,
And
Carrie.
I'm stopping there, but I'm just saying is that um that has been the focus, is not avoidance, but in the retreat. And in that retreat I can find the loving kindness, and that the truly only power of persuasion I have in this world here
Yay.
and now is to keep focusing on the loving kindness. And how is it going to
Gorgeous.
be sustainable? There is no sustainability, because that's an illusion. It's just each moment after
Okay.
each moment.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Uh, your beautiful, wise words. Misha, last but not least.
Hey, good to see you tonight, Howie. Um,
Good to see
yeah, I found myself having a repeat of behavior that happened for me on election day. I did a mail-in drop-off ballot, so I didn't need to go in and vote. And I didn't skillful for me to watch the inauguration live, so I was doing other things. Both days, what I found myself doing was multitasking activities, doing them back to back for several hours until I was exhausted. And I was like, okay, clearly it's affecting my system, even though I thought I could be okay if I just abstained. It's like, all right, no. So I had an insight about my own process where I realized that there was a thing arising like, oh, in this particular caring relationship of mine, there's this issue that's been there. Now would be a really good time to bring it up with this person. And then I was like, okay, wait a second. This is trying to find a target, something to resolve anyway. Thank God it's for practice, because part of what happened was I just processed with a friend, and then I ended up writing a little thing I posted in all my public places on Facebook that wasn't addressing any of the political stuff. It was just saying, hey, if you're dysregulated, now's not the time to pick fights or engage in fights. Here's what you can do.
Yay.
I was like,
Thank you. Thank you.
yay.
Nancy, if it can be very quick, feel free, but otherwise I'm going to move on, but I'd love to hear from you if you're.
Thanks, Howie. It is quick. This isn't anything I came up with. I just wanted to thank you for what you said, because I hadn't realized that I was doing exactly what you said. Was I was coming from aversion, and I have shut down because I'm angry.
Mm.
And for you to name it like that was just helpful to me, because I was actually trying to protect myself, but I see where it was coming from. So I just wanted to thank you for what you said.
Thank you. And it's a good reminder that we usually are angry. It is a way, it's actually a sign of love. We're trying to protect ourselves, but what it does is it creates more tension. That's the problem. It's just not a very reliable methodology. But so I'm glad that you know that your motivation was to protect yourself. So good on you.
Thanks, Howie.
And let's just pause for a moment and appreciate the collective wisdom. Something someone said reminded me of, somebody mentioned MLK, and had we been meeting yesterday, I would have done a whole thing on MLK, but I did. I'm sure many of you heard this quote, which was all over the national news, because people were highlighting a speech that MLK gave on April 3rd, which was April 3rd, 1968, which was 5 days before he was murdered. And it was, during the heart of the civil rights movement, and he told the audience, I think I have it written down where it was, and I don't remember now. But he told the audience that if God had let him choose any era in which to live, he would have chosen this one in which he had landed. Quote, "Now, that's a strange statement to make, because the world is all messed up. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land, confusion all around. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars." And that that's the kind of harnessing the dukkha, what the Buddha would say, dukkha that leads to sukha, the stress, the difficulties in our life, that if we meet them with love, with full attention, that they bring out the wisdom, the light in us, the stars in us. Well, I couldn't help but think today of the theme that you hear throughout the Dharma teachings of the two wings of awakening. It's the common refrain in the teachings of the wings of the Garuda in the Tibetan tradition, the wings of wisdom and compassion, or wisdom and love, and that you can't have one without the other, and that wisdom without love is emptiness, and love without wisdom leads to sorrow, to attachment, and that it's necessary to have wisdom and love. And it's just become so clear in the teachings and in my own life, and I imagine in your life, that the most, as I like to think of it, the most loving thing that I can do in this life, if you think of when we think of love and we think of cultivating love, our deepest desire is to be happy and to be free of suffering. So what would be the most loving thing to do? The most loving thing to do would be to reduce the causes of suffering and increase the causes of happiness. It's not rocket science. It's kind of simple. It's logical. And at least in the Buddha's teaching, and meant to be studied, meant to be inquired into, not meant to be believed, but meant to be. And when I say studied, it means look within the nature of your experience, moment to moment. Look within the nature of the mind. Buddha suggests that what really brings wisdom, what really brings more happiness and less suffering is wisdom. So the most loving thing we can do is become wise. And wisdom is really just knowing what leads to happiness and what leads to stress. And the wisdom that emerges is the wisdom of seeing things just the way they are. It's not seeing things with rose-colored glasses. It's not seeing things as we hope they will be. It doesn't mean we don't have hope and longing and desires for a beautiful, better world. That's totally inherent in our nature to aspire. But to free our hearts from confusion, from the causes of suffering, we don't need rose-colored glasses. We need to see things as they are. And in this case, in the case of our world that we find ourselves in, that every day, if we think that things shouldn't be this way, we suffer more. But if we see them the way they are, is the world is governed largely by, like I said before, a lot of goodness, but it's governed by the three poisons. It's not an aberration. It's the way it is. And the three poisons are greed. You can see it in spades. Greed, aversion, fear, hatred. So greed, hatred, and delusion. Delusion, the delusion of self, and what that leads to when it turns into malignant narcissism. I'm not referring to anybody in particular, but when it turns into narcissism, it's shocking, but that's the way it is. And wisdom also tells us that if our well-being is dependent on it being otherwise, then we're going to be unhappy. We are going to just be in a perpetual state of unhappiness and dissatisfaction while we are waiting, hoping, expecting things to be other than the way they are. I'm not saying don't try like hell to make a better world. I say do it all day long. So just, what is it? And Angelus Aaron used to say, action absorbs anxiety. Actions, wholesome actions of body, speech, and mind absorbs anxiety. So we have to engage in somehow, especially right now. It seems like if there's not an active way that you can do it, this is certainly a time to become passionate about our practice. But to be the most loving thing we can do is be wise. And that's why that to thine own self be true, to that deepest part of ourself be true. The most loving thing you can do is wake up, is to be liberated. Someone also passed on to me today a quote from And, where is liberation to be found? It's to be found not in some distant place. As Gendon Rinpoche says, happiness is not found by some great effort and willpower, but it's already present in open relaxation and letting go. He says, don't strain yourself to get somewhere. There's nothing to do or undo or fix or figure out. It doesn't come from willpower, but open relaxation, letting go. So don't strain. Don't go out of yourself in search. And so how do we stop going out of ourselves? We basically, as my teacher in India, when asked to give special teachings to all the people in the West who would want to hear what he had to say, he looked into the camera he was being videoed, and he said, stay where you are. Of course, it meant don't come and visit me. He didn't want to be inundated with people. But what he really meant is stay where you are. To that in you which is free, be true. Find that truth that lives in you as you. But this quote that was offered to me today was from, maybe many of you have heard of Hannah, I don't remember how to pronounce her name, Arendt or Arendt, Hannah. She was the one who coined the phrase, the banality of evil. And she was the one who was like a reporter, famous reporter who reported on the Nuremberg trials of the Nazis. And she coined that phrase, banality of evil. But this quote seems so essential for the wisdom, or for the most loving thing that we can do, and to be wise. She said, fearlessness is what love seeks. Such fearlessness exists only in the complete calm that can no longer be shaken by events expected of the future, no longer be shaken by events expected in the future. Hence, the only valid tense is the present, is the now, as she said. Sounds very Dharma, doesn't it? The only valid tense is the now. Now, of course, the present, I always like to point out the fact that the present is just another idea for reality. There's not a place in a way. We use the word now, we use the word present, we use the word reality, but it's just what's being experienced right now and what it is that's experiencing. The experience of experience, not the idea of it. And if we actually align with the experience of experiencing, something in us, that fearless part of ourselves, that anchor, that mountain strength is there. That immovable mind, as it's talked about I think that was in the Zen tradition. The immovable mind. Fearlessness is what love seeks. Such fearlessness exists only in the complete calm that can no longer be shaken by events expected in the future. Hence, the only valid tense is the present, the now. So that as I always say, the most loving is to be wise. The most wise, in the face of the heartbreak of being human, the challenge of being human, I have to admit my own family, including my own family, is in a kind of cluster of various either aging or illness or yeah, all kinds of things going on in my immediate family right now. And I know that I'm just an example of how everyone from, if you're born is navigating something that is really hard to bear. Everybody. And the only wise, I think Carrie said it earlier, the only wise response to that is love, is mercy. It's like the Reverend, I forgot her name again. I just was so taken by what she said that I forgot her name. Bishop Marion Edgar Budd says, I ask you to have mercy upon the people of our country who are scared now. They fear for their lives. And the beauty of the wisdom of love is that it is entirely cultivatable. If you've studied the teachings and studied what happens to you when you're quiet for a while, you see that the immeasurable qualities of the heart, the so-called Brahma Viharas, the heavenly abodes, the boundless qualities of love and compassion and joy and equanimity, impartial love, these just grow in us. They are part of our unconditional nature. They're not something they're not added to our nature, they're inherent in us. But because we're so conditioned for greed and hatred and ignorance and narrow-mindedness, we have to reawaken them. But they're so available to us. And it really entirely depends on how frequently we incline our mind or how frequently we dwell upon these qualities. And they just need to be remembered. That's why as much as there are teachings on wisdom, about the wisdom of emptiness and the liberation of the mind through insight, there are as many sutras on the liberation of the heart through love. Heart mind is the same anyway. Here's one of the little short pithy suttas from the Buddha. It is in this way we must train ourselves, by the liberation of the self through love. We will develop love, we will practice it. We will make it both a way and a basis. Take our stand upon it, store it up, and thoroughly set it going. So it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to really set it going. And my recommendation, you've all heard me, those who've been with me before, heard me talk about how portable it is and how you can just be practicing stealth, love, compassion, joy, and equanimity all day long. Everywhere you go, you wish people well, under your breath, you just even utter the internal words or the feeling, I love you, may you be happy, may you be free of suffering, especially when you see suffering in this world. And when you see joy, may your joy continue. May it increase, may it never wane. And when you see the joys and the sorrows, when you see the whole range of humanity, you say, and you see how people how people find themselves in their life situations, not due to just their own actions, but in systemic actions. The cause of our lives is not so personal. It's much more interdependent and systemic. when we see that everyone is the inheritor of conditions, many of which are outside of our control, we can hold the sea of conditions with some understanding that I care about all of you. I care about everybody, but I may not be able to. I may not be able to keep you from suffering. And so we can find balance in the middle of this sea of circumstances, sea of challenges. But we have to remember that so that our compassion doesn't devolve into reactivity or sorrow, or our joy doesn't devolve into greed or envy, that we can just keep growing in love. And just that constant reminder that we can every day, that I'm not going to put anybody out of my heart. Even those politicians and those, there's the, it's very interesting these days. Now the so-called boogie being are the billionaires. And there's a lot of the ones that are projected upon as in having a kind of inherent evil. And it just foments a kind of ill will and aversion. I'm not saying that there are not billionaires who have intense amount of greed, hatred, and delusion. But there's an othering that happens that is not so helpful in the long run. Instead, we just keep looking deeply into the hearts of everyone. See that everybody who is born dies. Everybody who the mighty, even in the Metta Sutta, no matter where you're mighty or small, seen and unseen, those living near and far away, may all beings be at ease. We even wish the ones who we have a hard time with, that they be happy too. Of course, we're going to do everything we can to stop them from doing things that are cruel out of confusion and ignorance. But we're going to still keep our hearts open, not put anybody out of our hearts. So I'll just end really quickly by, I've got two passages. Can you hang in there for a few minutes? Got one, the reminder to be mindful, from the beautiful teachings of Nosho Ken Rinpoche, where he says, homage to the sovereign within us, self-arising mindfulness, which can be cultivated. I am the sword of mindfulness. Look, my friends, when seeing me, be mindful. I'm the mirror of mindfulness. I mirror your careful attention. Look clearly and see into the essence of mind. Mindfulness is the root of the Dharma. Mindfulness is the body of the practice. Mindfulness is the fortress of the mind. Mindfulness is the friend of aware wisdom. Mindfulness is the support of all the different traditions. Lack of mindfulness will allow the negative forces to overcome you. Without mindfulness, you will be swept away by laziness. With lack of mindfulness is the creator of evil deeds. Lack of mindfulness can accomplish nothing. Lack of mindfulness is a pile of dung. Without mindfulness, you sleep in an ocean of urine. Without mindfulness, you are a heartless corpse. Friends, please be mindful. By the aspiration of the Lamas, the Buddhas, the Bodhisattva, the lineage masters, may all friends attain stable mindfulness. And then last but not least, is to leave you with the inspiration of the Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by those who are skilled in goodness and who know a path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward, gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. I'm going to stop a little early, but I'll just leave you with this last line. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies, downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. This is said to be the sublime abiding. May all beings grow in wisdom. May all beings grow in compassion. May all beings live with ease. Mary, I'm going to take it from here really quickly since we're gone over. Thank you so much for being here. Love being with you tonight. First time I felt almost normal in the last 3 weeks, so I'm really happy. And this Saturday, I want anybody who lives anywhere near the city to join in to our in-person half day. So don't pretend you don't know the details. I get calls all the time about wanting to meet in person. You got to show up though, or we're not going to do them anymore. And this is not to create any threat. I'm just saying that's just the way it is. So please come on Saturday. We'll have a ball 9 to 1 on Saturday. Look, and it's at the Dharma Collective, the San Francisco Dharma Collective. Also, thank you in advance for any generosity tonight. I'm sure Mary put in the chat any ways that you can offer Donna, and really love being with you. And feel free to unmute and say goodnight to each other.
Thank you, Howie.